Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you. Okay, so this is one of our last class meetings, right? We're only going to be meeting twice more after this. So I do just want to discuss a little bit of business before we get into talking about the text for today. First, most of you have been here just about every time, so good for you. Well done. But a couple of you have missed one or two in-class writings along the way. So here's what we're going to do about that. I will give you the opportunity to make up at home one in-class writing that you've missed. So if you've missed any, I will send you a list of those you've missed, and you will follow the usual rules on your own at home, and just bring it with you on the day of the final exam, right? Now, I will be also checking SparkNotes, Schmoop.com, and all of that, right? So I'm putting a significant amount of trust in you here, so please do not abuse that trust. But yes, I will give you the chance to make up one in-class writing of your choice. Also, right, I've been talking with some of you about your paper. Some of you are making progress. I've been talking with some of you about what's going on with your presentations. I have overall been impressed by how kind of forward-thinking a lot of you have been and how early a lot of you have gotten started on your various projects. But I do also want to be I want to be able to answer any questions, any general questions about either assignment that you have just this morning, while there's still plenty of time to work on these things. So does anybody have any questions about the paper or about the presentation? Yeah, Reagan.
Is there a minimum time that, you said don't go over 20 minutes for the presentation, right?
Yeah, 20 minutes is, I would prefer you not go really over or under 20 minutes, right?
Okay.
So try to hit as close to 20 minutes as possible, right? If you're like 17, 18 minutes, that's probably okay, right? If you're like 21, 22 minutes, that's probably okay. But 20 minutes is that sweet spot,
Okay.
right? The reason I don't want you going over 20 minutes is because we have a lot of presentations to get through. People do have other places that they have to be on that particular day, and I don't want to have to hold anybody up. So we just want to try to keep things running smoothly. But yeah, try to stick as close to 20 minutes as possible. You won't get penalized for going a little over or a little under, but any other questions about the presentation or the paper? Yeah, Jamie.
Can our final paper also be on the presentation? No.
No.
Okay. All right.
Different assignments.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, I mean, remember, it's like the presentation you're doing with other people, right? So you've got other people doing some of the legwork for you. So yeah, the paper is something I want you working on yourself. Any other questions? Clever workaround. Any other questions? Yes, Savannah.
If you don't exactly hit the word count, say you're 100 or 200 words under, how much is that going to affect the grade of the paper?
If you don't hit the word count exactly, it's not going to be that big a deal, right? Now, if you end up being like a full page or two short, that's going to be a problem. But if you get close to the word count, right, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Anything else? Okay, I do want to note as well that I'm going to have extended office hours on the 2 reading days, right? So on the Wednesday and Thursday of the week after Thanksgiving break, I will be in my office pretty much all day, barring 1-2 hour period on one of those days that'll be determined sometime this afternoon, right? I have to do a review session with one of my other classes, and I have to figure out exactly when that's going to be. But once I figure out when that's going to be, I will let you know when I won't be available in the office on Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, but by and large, you can just assume that I'm going to be in the office all day, those 2 days. Yeah, Taylor, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to verify, we can send our paper to you up to, is it 48 hours before the due date?
You can send your paper to me at any time, but I only guarantee I'll be able to look at it 48 hours before the due date. Because I'm gonna have, I'm gonna just gonna be honest here with you. Like, you guys have a lot of shit coming due at the end of the semester, right? So do I. I am gonna have a lot of stuff to go over. So the earlier you get me drafts, the more likely it is I will be able to go over them for you. This is typically the point of the semester when a lot of people are asking for help. And good, you should ask for help. And I may not be able to provide it as quickly due to volume. But rest assured that if you get something to me in a timely fashion, I will get back to you. I may not be able to get back to you immediately, but I will get back to you. Anything else? Yeah, Jamie.
How long is the Writing Center open?
I think their hours are posted on the website. You'd have to check. And I think they do have extended hours during the finals period.
Even like Aries, I had all around, so like you can just
Yeah.
until like 12 so.
Yeah, you can set up online appointments, and tutors will work with you through computer magic at pretty much any time. Anything else? No further questions? All right. Then today we're looking at the literature and culture of the Ottoman Empire in the 17th century. And before we go into any background here, I just kind of want to gauge your reaction to this. Any questions or comments you have about this before I start talking? So does anybody have any questions about Celebi or about the text in general? Yeah, Jenna.
Is the writer male or female?
Male. He's a man. Yeah. Evilya Celebi is a man. Yes, Frank.
This is based on a true account.
More or less true. Yes.
All right. And so if it's based on a true account, what war did this follow?
Well, at the time Celebi is writing, the Ottoman Empire is actually at war with various small European powers over influence in the Aegean Sea around Crete. But they were always in various kinds of negotiations with the other big empire in Europe, the Habsburgs.
Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Holy no Roman.
Yes.
Empire.
Yes. So they are the ambassadors they're dealing with at the beginning of this are Habsburg
So they're
ambassadors.
trying to keep the Holy Roman Empire from coming down on them, basically, for starting all these little wars.
Well, and they're also trying to keep things open for themselves to come in and take more Holy Roman Empire territory. Right? It's this kind of delicate dance between this, the great empire in the east and the great empire in the west. Right? The two biggest powers in Europe and Western Asia at the time. Sarah, you had a hand up?
Yeah, would the Ottoman Empire be kind of like the Middle East or closer to like Russia?
You know what? Yes. I'll show you.
Okay. I can't remember where it's at. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Because I see like some names that sound Middle Eastern
Uh-huh.
when they're talking about like Egypt, like on the bottom, like
Right.
descriptions and stuff.
Right. So yeah, it's probably easier just to show you than to try to explain.
Okay.
So when our happy little projector friend wakes up, you will see a map of the Ottoman Empire at its height. So in sort of like the 16th through late 18th century.
It used to be really big, right?
So the center of the empire is pretty much always what is now Turkey. Right? Their capital was at Istanbul/Constantinople. Both names for the both names continue to be used. Right? Constantinople was the name of the old Byzantine capital. Istanbul is the Turkish name. So the Christian community in the Ottoman Empire tended to continue to use the name Constantinople, while the Turkish Muslim community tended to use the name Istanbul. So Constantinople, we can see, is positioned at this strait where the Black Sea empties into the Aegean Sea, right into the Mediterranean. So it's right at the gateway between the Middle East and southeastern Europe. And much like everything we have here in orange, this was Ottoman territory. So in addition to Turkey, we have what's often called the Levant, right? Syria, what's now Israel and Jordan, Lebanon. Much of North Africa, including all of Egypt. Much of what is now Iran and Iraq. They have territory in the Caucasus and what is now, parts of what is now Russia, but also Georgia, Armenia, other independent nations, and most of the Balkan states. Right, so this is why, you may remember or you may not remember, you may be too young to remember this, in the 90s, there was a civil war in the former Yugoslavia, right, between ethnic Serbs, who were mostly Orthodox Christians, and Bosnian Muslims, right? Now, why were there Muslims in southeastern Europe, in the Balkans? Well, because of the Ottoman Empire, right? These are people who were converted when the Ottomans invaded in the 16th century. Greece was Ottoman territory for a long time. In fact, the British poet Lord Byron died, not in battle, but of fever, when he came to help out the Greeks in their war of independence from the Ottomans in the 19th century. So this is an enormous empire, a long-lasting empire, right? The Ottoman Empire was arguably founded in 1299, and it lasted until 1922. Right? It was broken up in the years following the First World War by the Allied powers that had won the war. So, for example, Syria and Lebanon became French territory. What's now Israel and Jordan became British territory, so on and so forth, right? Yeah, Sarah.
Well, this is kind of like off topic a little bit, but are the
Go ahead.
Greeks, are they more, related to the Middle Eastern people? Like, do they look more, or, I'm just interested to know.
Well, I mean, if you look at people from sort of the Mediterranean region, right, there is a kind of Mediterranean ethnic look, right? People tend to be dark-haired, olive-skinned, and so on and so forth, right? Dark-eyed. And you find that, you find that in Greece, you find that in Turkey, you find that in the Arab countries, you find that among Israeli Jews, although they're a bit more ethnically mixed. You find that all across North Africa. Yeah, I mean, there is that kind of, they're not necessarily ethnically related to each other. One thing that we have to remember about essentially human development, right, is that much of it is actually conditioned by where you live. A lot of the way people end up looking is really a result of the climate that your ancestors grew up in. I mean, for example, I am, pasty looking and blonde haired because my ancestors are from Northern Europe and saw very little sunlight, right?
Mine are Greek and Italian, so
Yeah.
that's why I was wondering, because I was like, okay, my dad's adopted, so I don't know,
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, and a lot of these groups, just sort of through constant contact with each other, are also closely culturally related, right? There are a lot of sort of cultural interlacings. But yeah, they're not necessarily genetically or ethnically related. Look, I mean, honestly, all human life, as far as we can tell, originates in Africa, and then people fan out from there in different directions. Most white people our ancestor would originally come from somewhere in Central Asia, sort of around where Afghanistan is now.
I read that it was like a recessive gene. Like, I don't know if that's true or not. But
Yeah, I'm not a biologist, so I couldn't tell you, but
I read a lot. I like something.
yeah, but yeah, anywho, so this, yeah. When you ask where the Ottoman Empire was located, was it in the Middle East, was it in Russia, was it in Africa? Like, yeah, the answer is yes, right? It's in all of these places. Its reach is pretty extensive.
I can't remember what words they were, but they sounded Russian.
Yeah, a lot of the place
That's why I was
names,
like,
yeah.
in Russia or Middle East, because I didn't know.
Yeah, the place names he's describing here actually are by and large Hungarian.
Okay.
Yeah, most of this portion of his narrative takes place in Hungary. But this is only a very, very small part of Evilya's work. Right, what our anthology calls Book of Travels in Turkish is called Seyahatname, which is the name for the genre travelogue as well as for this particular book. And it's 10 volumes. It's an enormous work. And it's written over a period of 40 years. Evilya starts writing in 1640 and doesn't finish up until about 1680. And what this is, I mean, this is a guy who lives a kind of nomadic, peripatetic life, right? He never marries. He never takes any sort of job that would tie him down to a specific location. He just attaches himself to various patrons and to various ambassadors who go traveling around various parts of the Ottoman Empire.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Evilya would be a good example of sort of an early cosmopolitan, a kind of world citizen. Right? A guy whose primary interest is traveling everywhere and consuming what he can of a variety of different cultures. Sometimes he likes what he sees, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he tells us the truth about what he sees, sometimes he fibs a little. But we do get from Evilya a lot of information about the culture of various parts of the Ottoman Empire in the 17th century that would otherwise remain unrecorded. And we also get from him a lot of, he's really actually into folklore and collecting folk tales. We don't really get any of that here, unfortunately. But he really likes going into these places and collecting, you know, some of the local legends. All right. Other questions about this? Anybody else have questions or observations?
What are the stars for, like, in between the words? Like,
Mm.
1580.
Okay, that indicates an omission. Yeah, that means that the anthologist has cut some stuff and skipped over some things. And yeah, what we again, right? This is a 10-volume work, right? This is a huge, huge text, and we've had it condensed here down to about like 5 pages. So we're only getting a very, very small portion of this. That's very focused on a specific slice of Evilya's very long career. And in fact, only a small portion of the Seyahatname has been translated into English. The whole thing has been translated into other European languages. You can get it, for example, in German. But you can't get the whole thing in English. No one has actually gone and done. Bless you. It's only relatively recently that scholars in the West have really paid any attention to this. And some of this has to do with its status in the Ottoman Empire. Like, it's one of the most popular works of Turkish literature. But that's also one of the things it has going against it, right? That keyword, popular. Right. The idea that popular texts, right, are not literature, are not art. Right. This is just, you know, the comic book bullshit that the masses consume, right? So sometimes works that are widely popular elsewhere in the world have a hard time finding an audience in other countries simply because we have this kind of prejudice against the popular. And also the popular is often harder to translate culturally than the literary, right? So if you look at what sorts of movies, for example, tend to do really well in overseas markets. Can you guess like what sorts of American films do really, really well overseas? Action movies do very well, yeah. Action movies do really, really well overseas. Anything that doesn't, pardon?
I was thinking anything superhero, like has.
Yeah, superhero movies do really well overseas. Anything with big robots fighting each other, right? And why do you think that is?
Godzilla.
Sure, Godzilla's great. Love Godzilla.
Yeah.
Although Ghidorah the three-headed dragon I prefer, but that's just a matter of taste.
We're viewed as an action sort of.
Pardon?
I don't know how to say it exactly, but we're viewed as like an action sort of nation. Like we
Mhm.
usually are the ones that takes action in like politics and other things. So
Sure.
it's kind of just, you know, it's kind of
Uh-huh.
a symbol for America is an action movie
Mm-hmm.
because that's basically what we do anyway. Not as explosions and all that, but
Mm-hmm.
everything else.
Okay. Well, let's focus here on the explosions, though, right? Things like that. Explosions,
Story. You have
giant.
to understand less of the culture of the nation you're trying to understand.
Exactly. That's
That's why
actually.
Godzilla was
yeah.
so popular here. You didn't have to understand all this
Mhm.
about Japanese culture. There's
No.
a giant monster destroying
Yeah.
the city.
Everybody gets giant radioactive dinosaur leveling buildings, right? This is not. Yeah.
Universal.
Exactly. The whole idea is that the plot of the film is universal enough. The events in the film are universal enough. They're not culturally specific, so it moves easily between borders. If you look at a genre like comedy, right? Comedy rarely finds an audience outside of its home countries. In part because much of the humor in a comedy film is verbal, right? It's based on jokes. And jokes don't always translate when you move from language to language. I remember I used to work, when I was in graduate school, I worked for a little while at a shitty Irish bar in DC, just, to pay my rent. And one of my coworkers was this Polish girl who was always telling these incredibly morbid stories, and then was flabbergasted as to why the rest of us didn't find them funny, right? Because to her, like, this was hilarious, but the humor didn't translate culturally, right?
I had a boss like that. She was from Russia.
Yeah.
She liked morbid jokes too. And I was
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
I didn't get it.
right.
She'd always get that.
Mhm. Right. And
Anti-joke things or like just
no, that
like
in
Brothers
Po-
Grimm
yeah,
tales.
in Polish they would have been jokes, but when you translate it into English, right, it's no longer funny, right? Particularly if the joke is based on any particular kind of wordplay.
That's like in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, baka means idiot, but if you say it backward, kaba is hippo. So
Yeah.
the kids made it like a game to like they'll say kaba 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 because it sounds like they're saying baka, which means idiot.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So jokes.
yeah, jokes. Yeah, but jokes tend to be culturally specific. And popular culture tends to be more culturally specific in a lot of ways than a kind of cosmopolitan literary culture. And Evilya is participating in some of these sorts of comic discourses, right? The kind of comedy that he writes in the Book of Travels is very much attached to particularly Ottoman cultural values, right? Was there anything in this that struck you as humorous, that struck you as funny? A lot of it is supposed to be. Wow, that's a ringing endorsement of Evilya's sense of humor. Anything at all here that you found funny? Okay, there are bits that are supposed to be funny. So let's look, if we look on page 1581, his description of the city of Schwekat in Austria. He's noting the differences in custom between the Austrians and his own people. Right, he says, their men and women do not avoid each other. Even when their wives sat together with us Ottomans in jollity and drinking, the husbands did not say anything. They go out freely, which is not sinful, because in this entire land of the infidels, it is the women who rule, which is their evil custom since the days of Virgin Mary. So he refers to their evil customs, right? What's the evil custom he's mocking here?
Women and men beer.
Yeah.
They're allowed to mingle to some extent with men.
Right, that women are permitted to mingle with men here, right? But who are they mingling with?
The Ottomans.
Yeah. He's including himself in this group, right? Their husbands didn't even mind when they mingled with us. Right, so he's saying men should not be mingling with women and women should not be mingling with men, while he is happily mingling with women, right? And he's just noted the beauty of the women of this place, right? So he's participating in the evil custom that he notes here. And referring to it in a kind of ironic way. Yeah, go ahead, Frank. What were you saying?
When in Rome.
Or Schwekat, as the case may be, yeah. Now, what else seems to baffle him or confuse him about the European cultures that he encounters? What seems to be his beef with Christianity, for example? What is it that seems to upset him about Christianity? Yeah, Ty.
Was it the part about where it was saying how they keep your money? Was it that part?
Well, there is a part where he compares Christian monks who take care of a library favorably with people he knows in Cairo who maintain a library and a mosque that they've let fall into rack and ruin, right? So it's on the one hand, yeah, these people seem to keep things a lot cleaner than we do and seem to have more respect for the written word than we do. He's fascinated by that library, but we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, that's another point I want to raise. Yeah, Frank.
Is it how they flaunt their wealth? Like, everything's made of gold and silver.
Okay, yeah, okay. Can you point me to a passage?
In beginning of 1581,
Uh-huh.
he goes on and on about the domes of every monastery are idolatrous temples,
Uh-huh.
covered with tin, tinfoil, yellow brass, and lead, and each of them are idols and chandeliers.
Mm-hmm.
These works the annual tribute of Egypt.
Uh-huh.
Every dome and tower are golden crosses as tall as a man, which sparkle all around the city.
Uh-huh. Their clock towers, too, are covered with tin sheet metal, and the sound of the bells carries as far as one day's travel. Now, he's really fascinated, this is just a side note, right? He's really fascinated, it seems, by clock towers and bells, right? By anything clockwork, but especially by clock towers. And some of this may have to do with professional interests. Evilya knew the entire Quran by heart. Just had it all up in his memory. And he was educated as a muezzin, right? Does everybody know what a muezzin is?
Isn't it like a kind of a priest or a wise man?
They have a clerical function. They're the guys who stand up in the minaret
And
issue the call to prayer. Exactly, yeah. So this is what he was trained to do professionally, right? He was a muezzin. And so these clock towers, these bells that issue the call to prayer instead, right? For him, that's a kind of